Well, hello and welcome back. We are continuing with our little backup-inator, we're going to call it, our little backup script. And we have currently, we've worked our way up to, if you look at a couple of the previous episodes, we did a couple of things where we're storing something off. And we've done storing and retrieving, creating a bucket in Amazon's S3. We've done zipping up files. This episode, I want to focus on using Python to back up a database. Now, we're going to do this is for MySQL, and this is going to be the brute force kind of approach. And basically what we're going to do is we are going to create a little function. We're just going to call it database dump. And we're going to use, from subprocess, we're going to use popen. And all we're going to do is we're going to actually use our normal dump type of command. So normally, if you don't know, you can normally dump a database by doing MySQL dump, and then you're going to do -u, and it's going to be a username, and then there's going to be -p, means it's going to ask you for a password, and then you tell it the database name, so it'd be db name, and if you normally what it's going to do is just going to kick out the SQL, so what you probably want to do is redirect it to somewhere like backup.sql. So if I do this, it's going to say enter your password. This is not anything real, so it's going to say, hey, it doesn't exist. And so this is something you may run into, because when we're running our script, we're not going to get that ability to ask for a password. Instead, we need to give it one. And so the way we do that is we create a thing called my.cnf, and we're going to put that, .my.cnf, and we're going to put it in our home folder. And all that is a text file. And it's going to look like this. We're going to have a section, and it's called MySQL dump, because we're going to say, hey, when we call MySQL dump for MySQL, and this will work for MariaDB as well, then we're going to give it the username and the password that we want to use in order to do that. Now here, and so we've got a -user. I think we can actually get rid of this completely. Let me check that, because I have this entry built for my database user in my .my.cnf. I think we can do it without that. So if I do MySQL dump, let's just run it. Because there's not a whole lot to, whoops. There's not a whole lot to this script, and especially if I spell Python right and don't add a typo in there. All we do is we're going to come in and we're going to give it a database name, and we're going to give it an output file. So if you come up here, database name and output file, and then here, I'm just throwing those in. So my database name, and I'm going to go out to my output file, and notice that it's, so it'll be in the current folder. I could put more into this, and I've just been giving it a whole thing. So I've got this .sql extension. I've got this database. So now if I run it, let's see if I do it without a user. Cool. And so if I go look here, let me actually remove, what did I call it? Shorty.sql. Let me run that again. So I don't even need to give it a user. There we go. And if I do cat shorty.sql, then here is my database. And you see it's like a big old dump. And so it starts with a whole bunch of checks and stuff like that. What's the database type? And then for each table, it's going to drop it if it exists. And it's going to create the table. And then it's going to enter all the data. So, and it's very straightforward. So if I wanted to replace this, I could go into MySQL. And I could use shorty. And if I do source, what I call shorty.sql, then it's going to run through, and now I've just replaced my database. Now, this is the reason we're doing that. We've got two things that we have value in doing this. Now, one of them is for this specific script. Now, one of the things you may be thinking is like, well, hey, what if, and this is a business use that's got me thinking about this, what if I've got an app and I've got it out on a server somewhere, and I want to have the ability to allow somebody to grab a backup of the database and do something with it. Well, in Django, we can actually make that pretty straightforward. We've seen how we can do it in our scripts. So we can just, in a Python script, do something this simple. It's really, you can set this up in a couple of minutes and boom, you have a database backup. Now, if I want to do it in Django, what I would do is in the URLs, I'm going to create a URL, like for example, dump, and then I'm going to give it an ID. So I'm going to have a URL that looks something like this. Actually, it's going to be, it's actually not be /dump, but basically whatever my path is, and I'm going to give it an ID because what I want to do is within and let me just keep that there for now. So then this is what it's going to look like in the view code. Is I'm going to come in from the request. I'm going to take that ID. I want to make sure not anybody can do it. So this is like the simple, very easy way to secure it, and that secures in quotes, but it's basically, it says, hey, if they don't give me the right ID, then I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to send them back to whatever the home page is, which is this. I'm going to redirect. Otherwise, I'm going to come in and basically the same thing that we've got here, this little DB dump. I've changed it just a little bit. Now, in this case, I'm going to have a hard code. I'm going to have within my code my database name and my output file. I could pass those as parameters if I wanted to. And then what I really know how to do now, since I don't need this, is I'm going to do a MySQL dump. And then it's the same thing here. It's just the DB name to the out file. Now, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn right around. I'm going to open that file I just created, that SQL file I just created, and then I'm going to send it back to them. So it's going to end up downloading the SQL file that we just told it to. So it's going to download the backup, the whole database dump. Now, obviously, this could be a problem at times because it could be a huge file. It's also, obviously, it's a security risk. The fact that you have in your website a way to do that, but you can lock that down various different ways. You can use a password. You can have it so that they have to be logged in, that they have to be, an admin or something like that. A lot of different ways you can do it. So I'm giving you a shotgun. Be careful that you don't blow your toes off or something like that. Now, this is going to be very useful for us with our backup piece, because we're going to have two things we're going to be looking at. When we're doing the backup, we want to, we'll have like step one is backup and store the database. And then we're going to have a step two, which is going to be back up the files and store, let's actually say zip and store them. And so our next, in the next session, that's one of the things we're going to talk about is like, all right, now that we've got those pieces together, we have in our backup, we've got a file, but what we're going to do is we're going to add something to scroll through a directory, pull all those files, put them into a zip file, which is what we looked at before, is basically zipping that file. So there's one file, one big zip file that would be necessarily all of our backup folders and the files within them. We're going to take that, we're going to shove that out, and we're also going to have the ability to do a database if we want to, or actually we could technically do multiple databases. We can even do multiple databases, zip those up, and have a single file that we're going to store out in S3. So we're going to talk about that next time. There's several ways we can go with this. Right now, I just wanted to make sure that we're good with database dumping your database from Python is super, super simple. And actually, some of this, like the database name, once you've got your .my.cnf file built, you could actually pull this database from the settings in Django. The Django settings file. We use that database all over the place. So you could easily set this up so that it never actually has, like I do here, it never actually uses the database name. It instead would use the one, whatever the settings database name is. So, and you could also do that so it could flip from like settings to set up. So you could do it from production or database or development or testing or whichever configuration you're running from. Keep this one sort of short. There you go. That is how you dump your MySQL database or MariaDB database out to a file so that you can copy that somewhere else, back it up, send it to a buddy, whatever it is you want to do. Go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Well, hello, this is Rob from Developreneur, Building Better Developers, and we have a mastermind class that will be starting, or actually several mastermind classes starting in 2024. Check us out at technologymastermind2024.com. We've got all the information you need, including some pricing, early bird discounts up to 50% off, but those are things that you're going to have to act soon. There is an application process, so go ahead and sign up today. Thanks a lot.